Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast and get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome Caissa Troutman. She's an obesity medicine physician and a family physician, and her KevinMD article today is Navigating Self-Judgment with Compassion. Caissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
So we'll talk about your article in a little bit, but first off, briefly share your story and journey.
Yeah, so again, I'm Caissa Troutman. I'm a triple board certified obesity, culinary medicine, family doc. I opened my direct care weight wellness practice over here in central Pennsylvania late last year. And I help patients lose weight for the last time. Modern science has shown us that it's not as simple as calorie in, calorie out. So I help my patients understand their unique brain and biology to achieve that long-term weight loss, which is something I speak about, not just from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal experience as a person with obesity who has lost and kept off almost a third of my body weight.
All right. So you mentioned that this is a direct pay obesity medicine practice. So talk about your typical day and some of the cases and patients that you see routinely.
Yeah. So again, my practice and my own is fairly new. It's like 5 months in. Actually, 6 months prior to that, I was the medical director of a integrated system. So it's a big system over in Central PA. So I would say like a typical day now in my own practice, which is my dream practice, is when I see my patients in the office, but I also support them outside of the office. When I see them in my office or via telemedicine, we really look at the 4 pillars. How are they with their nutrition? Can we make some tweaks in their nutrition that will generate the goal that they want? We talk about physical activity and common barriers that they experience, because everybody's life is different, right?
Yeah.
My life, is different from my patient's life. We talk about stress and sleep a lot because a lot of my patients struggle with stress for sure. And there is that connection between we eat when we're stressed, we eat when we're overwhelmed, which is kind of part of what my article is about. And I also prescribe FDA approved anti-obesity medications as a tool to help with their lifestyle modifications and instituting the practices that we want.
All right. So let's talk about your KevinMD article. It's titled Navigating Self-Judgment with Compassion. For those who didn't get a chance to read your article, tell us what it's about.
Yeah, so this came about as one of the things I do in my practice is I send like a weekly, thought, or I call it Monday musings from your MD to my patients. And it could range from topics between nutrition, physical activity. In this particular time, I actually just shared an excerpt from my life. So it talks about how I made a mistake that certainly from looking at it from different points of views could have been prevented, yada, yada. But in the end, the mistake happened. And as a physician, as I think most physicians are, we're all very hard on ourselves. We have such a harsh inner critic. So I would say I am a recovering perfectionist. So that perfectionist attitude created a behavior for me, which was emotional eating.
Mm.
And that's how I kind of got tuned into it. Was I first looked at the behavior. It was like, why am I eating when I'm not hungry? I mean, this is exactly what I tell my patients about, like don't eat when you're not hungry and stuff. So I used that time when I was eating when I wasn't hungry, like to pause and say, why am I eating when I'm not hungry?
Yeah.
And then from there dove into, okay, the reason why is this, which brought me to that thought of I'm a perfectionist. It was so mind-blowing for me to realize at that moment that I was living under that weight of I cannot make mistakes. I mean, obviously I know that everybody makes mistakes. The rational part of me knows that everybody makes mistakes, but the reason I was so hard on myself for this one mistake was, or for this mistake was I was under the belief that I couldn't make mistakes. And it kind of made me realize too, retrospectively, like why I'm always so hard on myself, or like, things that happen either outside of my control, or certainly sometimes because of what I did.
So tell us, how did you come to that realization? What was the thought process behind that made you think, hey, I needed to make a change, or I realized that I have to change?
I always kind of tell with my patients, it's like when you find the behavior, know the underlying reason or thought. Because when you realize that, what that is, that will help you change. Meaning, we know when we're doing something that we know we're not supposed to be doing, but we do it anyway. Like exercise more, drink more water, eat my veggies, and we all intellectually or rationally know that that's what we should do, but we end up not doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody want to raise their hand and say that's kind of who we are, right? So when that happens, it's always because there's a reason why we're not. So in this case, I know, I mean, I'm an obesity medicine doctor. I shouldn't be eating when I'm not hungry. And I try my best to willpower to not eat it by like putting the cake away, not being surrounded by the trigger foods, but I still find myself doing that habit. So it's like, okay, why am I doing this again? What's happening? And then is it in line with who I want to be? Right? Is it aligning with my goals? And obviously, eating when I'm not hungry does not align with my goal to keep the weight off. Right. So that's how I would say we would begin to change when we realize the action that's not generating the result we want. And is it in line with the behavior you want to be or the future you or future me? And then from there, okay, so if I keep thinking this, then I'm gonna keep eating the cake, right? If I keep thinking that I can't make mistakes, then I'm gonna keep buffering the emotion. So that's how I think I started, like, okay, if I want to change this behavior of eating the cake, I gotta change my thought. And what is a good thought to have so I could feel better? And that's where I came upon, that, well, I've heard of Kristen Neff before, that idea of self-compassion and not self-judgment. And so I've heard about her before. I've read her works before. I guess at that time it didn't connect with me because, for whatever reason, but this time it really like spoke to me, where it's really like acceptance. And it's interesting, if you read her work or go on her website or read her book, the best motivator is not the self-judgment, it's that self-compassion.
So that journey from self-criticism to self-compassion, you outline all the steps that you took. How difficult was that for you to do that?
Super difficult. and I think it's not it's not overnight, that realization. I think the awareness is the first step. And I would say, through the power of just being practicing mindfulness, that literally maybe took me like 3 to 4 years, like, number one, oh, I've heard of mindfulness. What is that? And number two, like, oh, listen to some podcasts about mindfulness. Sounds kind of like out there, but yeah, people say it's cool, whatever. Until, I'm in life coaching. I have a physician life coach. So, I get to see it more applied in real life. And that's how I think I was able to like connect it from just the theoretical that I hear to something I could apply in something as simple as, eating my cake, you know? Yeah.
One of the things that you wrote was reframing mistakes as opportunities for growth, and I think that shifted mindset really contributes to that healthier mindset. Give us an example of how you would do that in your life in the past. How would you reframe a mistake as an opportunity for growth?
I think intellectually, we know that, right? We know that not everything is meant to happen
Yeah.
for us. So it's not going to all be happiness and roses and rainbows and butterflies, but we just don't want it to be that way. We want to be the always positive, always happy, but it's not. So that's the first one. So when I encounter anything negative, sometimes I just look at it as, what is God showing me? What let me kind of rephrase that.
Sure.
One of the things that's, I think, changed for me as well is, a renewal of my personal faith. And, it could be for other people, belief in the universe, belief in that oneness, right? But for me, it was a personal relationship or renewal of faith, which in there it is that there is a plan for me. If I start my day with the understanding that there is a plan for me, positive or negative things that happen actually have a lesson for me. So part of that is a way I would ask it is like, okay, what's the lesson for me? So I try to find, in a way, it's kind of like trying to find the positive, gratitude, I can tell you, one would be my husband had a stroke. He had a stroke in 2020. He was at that time like 46, 47. So he's no residual deficit, thank God. Maybe just some mild fatigue, but he recovered from that stroke. But right from that definition, you would say having a stroke is horrible, right? It's a negative life experience. But and obviously it was horrible, like what we
Mhm.
went through and what he went through. But on the other side of that painful experience was my husband and I started kind of communicating more,
Mhm.
from, we're not, obviously our marriage is not perfect, but I think we're in a better place. We're better friends, better best friends. I think from there too was part of what galvanized me to actually follow my dream instead of being a employee, to finally kind of take that jump to listen to that quiet inner voice that kept saying, oh, maybe there's more in life. But then I'm like, oh, I'd rather stay here where it's safe and just keep doing my job. So yeah, so I think, and so many more things, that I think became closer as a family and all that. So it doesn't always have to be similar effects in
Mhm.
terms of, of that. But yeah, so and I think with anything, now again, sometimes it may be negative, but sometimes you don't change the circumstances, just changing how you look at it, you know?
A lot of physicians are today where you were back then. They're perfectionists by nature. A lot of physicians are very self critical. What kind of advice do you have for them? You mentioned that you had a life coach to help guide you. Should physicians have life coaches to guide them? What kind of tips can they do to really start that journey from self criticism to self compassion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think as with anything, everybody's path is different.
Hmm.
I think life coaching is amazing. And I think having someone external to you show you how you think and how maybe you can make adjustments in how you think, or how the effects of what you're thinking is creating your current situation, is helpful.
Hmm.
I mean, one thing I'd probably say to start as an actionable tip would be read Kristen Knapp's work, Self Compassion. I like how she gave an example. The example she gave was if about a child coming home with a failing grade in math.
Hmm.
So and if for those that have children, they probably would kind of correlate, connect to that. Or if they don't, certainly can use it like a friend, dear friend. But the example she said was, if you have a child, a high school kid that came home with a failing grade, how how would you as a parent respond, right? And there's two ways. One would be shame and blame, which would be, oh my god, you're horrible, you are a loser, you are a
Hmm.
failure. And then that would create maybe a small percentage of them working harder and maybe getting a better grade next semester. But at the end, it creates that defeated, depressed. That sounds so familiar, how we talk to that's how we talk to each other, to ourselves, right? Like, oh my God, I made a mistake. I'm
Hmm.
horrible. I'm bad. I don't deserve, XYZ. So that's the self-critical inner critic that is self-judgmental. And then the other way would be to be more supportive.
Hmm.
And so we would say to the kid, or, oh, that must feel horrible that you failed in math. I know you really wanted to go to college or have a good grade so you can go to college. How can I support you? So how can we, because failing is will not get you to college. So what can we do? Well, how can we support you so you can do better next time and get to college? So the way she broke it down was, just recognizing their feeling,
Hmm.
right? So in this switch from, oh, I'm so horrible, it's first that's like, this feels bad. This feels bad. Failing, making my mistake
Hmm.
felt bad. And then switching to, how can I support you? So talking to ourselves, okay, if I'll just use it as myself. Okay, Case, how can I support you? How can I support this fact that you feel crappy? So, we're not diminishing the need to still do better at math, right?
Hmm.
But it just creates that positive, self-sufficient, coming from a place of compassion,
Hmm.
and it's okay. versus anger and stuff. So
We're talking to Caissa Troutman. She's an obesity medicine physician and family physician. Today's KevinMD article is Navigating Self-Judgment with Compassion. Caissa will end with some of your take-home messages to the KevinMD audience.
yeah, so I think physicians, we are our number one critic, right? And we can continue living in that space of criticizing ourselves, but I think the end result there would be an unhappy doctor or an unhappy physician, and you may not be living the best life you have. If we come and change it to this place of self-compassion, we'll get healing, and then we get to live, I think, an intentional life coming from a place of peace and clarity.
Caissa, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and journey. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for letting me get on. Appreciate it.